See how it goes. Hello and welcome back to Jane Eyre Chapter 2. Chapter 1 recap. The story opens at Gateshead Hall on a rainy November day. We've met Jane and her cousins Georgiana, Eliza, and John, as well as her benefactress, Mrs. Reed, along with a couple of staff members from Gateshead Hall, namely Bessie and Abbott. So in Chapter 1, we saw that John and Jane got into a fight, and so as punishment, Bessie and Abbott were taking Jane into the Red Room as commanded by Mrs. Reed. So let's proceed now to Chapter 2. As Bessie and Abbott was taking her to the Red Room, she was resisting all the way. I feel like this might not be the first time that it happened to her. And
Can you open the windows?
why? Because it's a little a little warm. Are you feeling warm as well?
A little bit.
Okay. As they were taking her to the Red Room, Abbott, the servant, was saying,
"For shame! For shame! What shocking conduct! How dare you strike your benefactress son!"
"How dare you hit John, your cousin, the master of this house?"
Oh, so she's bad as well. Like Abbott?
Kind of, yeah. I feel like she sees Jane as really someone who refuses to behave. You know, just in my perspective, she's not, ouch, hey, she's not receiving love and respect from those people around her. So how can she really reciprocate something that she's not even receiving from those people? Abbott was saying, "How dare you do that to your master?" Jane, and then Jane said, "Master? Am I a slave?" Abbott was saying, "You are worse than a slave because you do nothing for your keep." So like, she doesn't clean, she doesn't cook, she's just, I guess, basically a tenant or like a freeloader in the house. And that's why they are so critical about how she's responding to the Reed family. They arrived at the Red Room and they threatened to tie Jane to a stool so she'll behave. And then Bessie, she was giving advice to Jane about being a bit more pleasant and, you know, like tolerant and patient, because, you know, if the Reeds decide to kick her out of Gateshead Hall, she's gonna go to the poorhouse. And Jane was like, yeah, and no matter how bad it is here, I don't feel like going to the poorhouse, because she's pretty smart. She knows what happens in there. She knows that she won't really be provided with the things that she needs. She won't be comfortable in there. So there's no internet. She kept quiet. She was just silent, because deep inside she knew this, and she actually hated the feeling of being dependent. She's just not the type to take it all in. You know, if she knows that something is unfair, then she really has to speak about it. And now that I think about it, it can actually go both ways. You know, growing up from that kind of environment, she could have grown into a cunning woman, you know, where she pretends or manipulates the people around her and compliments them to get what she wants. That's one way to survive. But I think she's going through the other way of being just really headstrong and assertive, that no, this is wrong. I'm not gonna do that. That is not me. I'm not gonna listen to you. Okay, Bessie and Abbott left Jane alone
in the Red Room.
In the Red Room.
But they didn't tie her up.
No, they didn't tie her up.
Okay.
For now. Oh, no, just kidding. So it was called the Red Room because when you look at it, everything is red. Like red drapes, red bed sheets, red tablecloth. Hey. Hello. You wanna go out?
Yes.
And then the furniture that they had in the house was mahogany, and mahogany has that reddish tint, and that's why it's called the Red Room. It was one of the largest and grandest room in Gateshead Hall, but nobody ever uses it. Maybe whenever they have parties and lots of guests are coming in and they need that extra room for people to sleep over, then they use it. But other than that, nobody ever uses it. Mrs. Reed even very seldom visits it, but she does so every once in a while if she needs some kind of document or jewelry.
Like, does the family have like bad memories in there or something like that?
Yeah, so it was Mr. Reed's main chambers.
Oh, like
That's his
office.
like. Well, you know how I guess in those huge mansions they would have a bedroom and then an adjoined office, an adjoined wardrobe, bathroom, ensuite.
Sorry. How's Jane related?
Oh, again.
So is her parents brothers or sisters with the mom or Mr. Reed?
Her mom, Jane's mom,
Yeah.
was Uncle Reed's
Sister?
sister.
Oh, okay.
You were listening in first chapter.
She married poor.
No, I'm trying to remember because
Yeah. I got confused as well. Yeah. Understandable. Before Mr. Reed passed away, she was already an orphan. And so Uncle Reed took her in when both her parents passed away. I think both her parents also passed away because of
Do you think?
the sickness
A
or
small cut.
a cold, maybe cold or just a simple flu, possibly, right?
Well, they didn't have germ theory back then, so like sanitation, like personal like in a way that you wash your hands doesn't exist back then.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean surgeons back then wouldn't even wash their hands before operating on someone.
That's why everyone's just dying from so many causes.
From simple things, I guess. Like if you think about it now. So is Mr. Reed kind to Jane?
Yes. So we're gonna go to that a little bit later.
Yeah. Too far ahead.
Not really too far ahead, but I just wanted to mention about Jane's soliloquy. Am I pronouncing it right? Her like inner monologue, how she's ranting about how unfair it is, because her three cousins, they aren't by any means nice or gentle children. Georgiana was pretty and she can get away with everything just because she's cute, but she's pretty privileged. Georgiana had a bad temper. Eliza, the other sister, she is very selfish. And John, we've seen from chapter 1. Large. We used the word large. And John, we've seen how he was from the first chapter, and he was so vile. He even, calls their mom names, because I think they have dark skin, just like him as well. Mom has dark skin, he has dark skin, but he calls her mom names. They didn't say it in the book, but he sometimes called her old lady, and I guess that's a disrespectful way to call your parents back in the day. And not only that, he even tears her silk cloths, I guess her scarves and clothes, her accessories, he tears them up, and yet they were still my darling children. They are expecting so much from Jane, and I guess that's where her fight comes from. Like, she follows the rules, she does what everyone tells her, but she's still being scolded at every little tiny mistake that she makes, while the three of them can get away with literally anything. So she was so distraught, and unfair was just flashing in her mind's eye because of everything that is happening. And she's even starting to think if I can't escape this house, then maybe I should just stop eating or drinking altogether until I... So, you know, for a 10-year-old... Hunger strike, yeah. So for a 10-year-old to really think about those things, I can't imagine how hopeless and helpless she feels at that time. She's also starting to lose her courage. She's starting to think, well, I know that if I were a little bit kinder and more polite and more tolerant, and if I keep my mouth shut, basically, that they would be a bit more tolerant of me, that even John maybe wouldn't pick on her as much if she does that. They've gaslighted the out of her. So sad. Aren't you sad? And now we know that the reason why she's staying with them and the reason why her aunt tolerates her was because it was her uncle's last wish. He made her promise to keep taking care of Jane and treating her like their own child, which she is barely doing. So maybe she just kept the first half of the promise of...
Well, maybe that's how she treats her own children.
No, obviously she doesn't.
They grow up to be... They grow up to be assholes. So.
It's so obvious that she spoils them.
Well, it is still badly.
Yeah, I mean...
Still relatively badly.
It's like Petunia and Vernon Dursley. They spoil him to a fault. So instead of nurturing him to be a better person, they are actually turning him into such a not an outstanding member of society. And that's, I think Dumbledore had the line about it.
The best that can be said is that he has at least escaped the appalling damage you have inflicted upon the unfortunate boy sitting between you.
And they were like so scandalized.
What do you mean we have given him everything that he could ever ask for?
And that's exactly it. So giving him exactly what he wants without working for it, without him understanding what is wrong, what hurts other people or not. That is specifically what is making him not an outstanding member of society. As the night deepens and the room darkens, she started to imagine ghosts. She thought of stories that she heard before, how the dead would roll around. Yeah, they would roll around their graves if their last wishes weren't met. So because she was questioning herself, she was so scared that maybe I am a bad child. Maybe my uncle would rise from the dead and scold me right here. And then suddenly she saw a gleam of light moving across the walls. In hindsight, she thought that it might have just been a reflection of a lantern from someone walking on the grounds, but because she was already so out of it, she thought that it was a ghost coming down on her. So she ran to the door, tried to open the knob and screamed. Because of her fear, she didn't even realize that she screamed.
Yes.
And obviously Abbott and Bessie came running and asked her, "What's wrong? Are you sick? Are you ill? What happened?" And she told them, "I think I saw a ghost, I saw a light." And Abbott was saying,
What kind of attention-seeking child are you? I would have understood if you were hurt, but it was all for nothing. You just wanted our attention.
And then suddenly Mrs. Reed came in. "What is happening here? I thought I said that I am the only one who's gonna take her out of that room when she's, behaved." And then they tell her what happened. Mrs. Reed obviously didn't believe her, and then she said, "I hate lying children." John, who's spending 2 months at home because he said that he was unwell, but he wasn't really.
The double standards!
She begged Mrs. Reed to please, please, please just let her out, to please punish her in some other way. But of course, they didn't listen to her. Mrs. Reed pulled her hand out from Bessie's and thrusted her back into the red room. So Jane had no choice but to keep on crying and crying, crying until she fainted. And that was the end of the chapter. And so that ends chapter 2 of Jane Eyre, and we'll be back in a jiffy. We've already finished filming chapter 3.